Where, in your view, is the sort of key constraint, and why, like, say, many data points these days, are economists having a hard time getting the number right?
Yeah, and it's good to talk to you guys again. And I'm surprised that people were surprised
Ah,
that housing starts came in the way that they were. Because as we're looking at the data, as we talked last time, there was this massive tug of war between what's happening on the supply side and what's happening on that demand side. Right now, we're in the thick of it. And we at Zonda, we track lot supply and we look at vacant developed lots. These are lots that could be turned into a start tomorrow. That's at the lowest level it's ever been. As far as we've been tracking it, we have never seen inventory for ready to build lots low. So
huh.
you shouldn't be surprised that starts aren't really keeping pace with demand. But then it goes back to all the other headaches that we've talked about on the building supply as well.
Well, then that feeds into this idea of affordability as well, because I would think they would go ahead and start building those things if they thought that they could sort of pass on some of the costs to the end buyer in some way. Is that not the case?
So it is. And they're looking, when we talk to builders, we say, what are the biggest issues that you're facing? And so number one is the building material cost. Number two is the building material availability. So sometimes homes are going to be starting to be built and then they can't get windows. And then they have to wrap the home because they're not able to get all of the supplies. So that's frustrating and that messes up really the building process as you're going through it. But then number three is new home affordability. We're really hearing builders start to pivot their talk on affordability. I'm starting to get nervous about how high prices have run up and how quickly.
Are they sensing peak demand? I mean, are they not able to shift some of what they're currently building because the prices have just got too high for many?
So for now, they have not said peak demand. We have a lot of builders that feel really confident that in the future they're going to continue to see a lot of demand, because another part of that lot picture are lots under development. So these are lots that they may have equipment on site or they're going through excavation, dirt is moving. Builders bought a whole bunch of land over the past year. It just takes time to get it ready. So the builders believe that if they're able to bring those lots to market, well, then all of a sudden there's going to be buyers that are ready for it because of that massive supply and demand imbalance. Let me give you a stat that I heard today that just blew my mind. If you look at a market like Phoenix, so it's the third biggest for overall housing starts. It is one of the markets that will have almost every public builder active in it. The entry level price point in 1 year time moved up from $250,000 to $350,000. That is what makes builders nervous.
Explain this a little bit further. I'm actually having a hard time wrapping my head around it, because on the one hand, as we just talked about with Olivia, there's this huge gap between lots that have been, authorized for building of houses, but where there's no actual start. But what you're saying is that we see actually that there are not many spots immediately ready for building. I'm trying to understand what the difference between the two data points is to sort of reconcile those.
Yeah, so when some of the homes that are becoming started, those are going to face their labor issues.
Right.
So I know we've talked a lot about lumber and we've talked about the windows and other building supplies. What we've seen is that home sales are up 40% year over year, at the same time that construction employment is up 20% year over year. So if you're going to be saying, okay, we want to start these homes, we want to bring these to the market, not only are we facing all these building supply issues, but you also now have to get your framer to come on site, and you have to get all of the other contractors and subcontractors to get on site. So that's becoming one of the issues. Second point that you're...
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Allie.
The second point that you mentioned is those vacant developed lots that are ready to be built on. Those have been absorbed very quickly. So that would mean developers had brought that to a finished lot, you can build on it. Builders would have bought those, and they're working through those starts right now. But to backfill those, that's one of the biggest issues right now.
I was curious here, just going back a little bit, Allie, about labor costs and what the builders are sort of reporting on that level.
Yeah, so it's twofold. And you're finding that with all of the different things. So when you talk building materials, it's cost and availability. When you talk labor, it's cost and availability. So you are seeing that the trades are asking for a little bit more money. You are seeing that there's some upward pressure on wages from the corporate side all the way down to the actual building of the home as well. But it's also, how are you finding enough skilled laborers in quick time to be able to match all the demand that we're seeing as well?
Any geographical breakdown? Any areas that people are moving from or moving to in terms of the labor? Where are they shifting around to sort of find their highest price, if they can?
Yeah, so the craziest markets to look at is if you look at starts and you look at starts compared to what we've seen, let's just say last cycle, because last cycle the peak was so high and those are crazy numbers to compare it to. You actually have a few markets across the country where single family housing starts are above the levels of the mid 2000s. And so that would be areas like Nashville, Austin, Texas, of course, is one of those big markets as well. And then just the smile states, look down to Florida, Tampa, Jacksonville, even Orlando have done really, really well. And so if you are looking for construction work, you can go to those markets. But again, if you're talking about in Jacksonville, for example, sales are up over 50, 60% year over year. You have to be able to find the workers to help build those homes as well.
In terms of, so, okay, we're seeing this throttling of demand. As you mentioned, there's still plenty of demand out there from actual people who want to live in a home, but for various reasons, supply constraints, labor constraints, so forth, is just slowing down. Is this eventually demand that will come back on and it's just going to get essentially elongated over the coming quarters and years, but eventually it'll materialize?
So I think it's a great point. And what we know is 91% of builders are intentionally slowing their sales, meaning that they could sell 25 homes per month per community. They're choosing to sell 5. And that goes back to the costs. They want to be able to control their costs and appreciation. They don't want to sell that home. Now that home is going to go up in value, let's say $20,000, $30,000 while they're building it. They want to be able to capitalize on some of that upside as well. So that's the builder landscape.
And this is pretty much nationwide, or are there regional differences that we're seeing?
It still is nationwide, yeah. And then as we look at that, and then to go to the demand question, Joe, I think it's a really important one because we're now at the peak age of the largest living generation, the millennials, who are ready to buy homes. Millennials on average are 30 to 31 years old. They get married at 32 and they're ready to buy homes at the same time. So when we're looking at those trends, we have a lot of millennials that bought this year, but there's a lot of millennials that are not competitive in today's market. They're losing out to move-up buyers. They're moving out to investors. They're losing out to 55 plus buyers. And so what I have found in my research, we've surveyed millennials every year for the past 5 years. What they've said is, we want to buy a home, but the lack of inventory is holding us back.
Yeah.
We are afraid the market's going to drop. That's holding us back. And also the inability to come up with a down payment and be competitive today.